Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in these southern United States. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, you can leave us a voicemail. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We got a great show lined up for you this morning. We're going to jump right into it. We've got a union campaign going on right here in Huntsville, the United Auto Workers. Workers at International Motors, Navistar, an engine manufacturing plant here in town, are trying to organize with the United Auto Workers. They filed a petition a little less than 2 weeks ago. And the employer attempted, I was reading the files in the case this morning on the NLRB's website, and the employer attempted to proffer the same arguments that some big companies like SpaceX are putting before the courts, saying that regional directors of the NLRB have no authority to conduct elections because the national board does not have a quorum because of the Trump administration's illegal firings of board member Gwen Wilcox. The board now does not have a quorum. And so some employers are saying, well, because the national board doesn't have a quorum, well, the National Labor Relations Board as an entity cannot do anything at all. It is actually, it's a dead letter. It can't do anything. And so some of them are, there are a lot of companies that are putting forward this idea, but and it hasn't, it hasn't made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court this time yet. And so we're going to see what they say, what the Supreme Court says. I mean, if they care anything about the law, then they will not uphold the employer's arguments here, because as the regional director for Alabama and, a lot of the South, point out in their decision ordering an election and rejecting the employer's arguments, this case has been tried before. There have been periods in the history of the United States where there either may be an NLRB quorum, or there may not be, or there may not be soon. And so employers have tried this argument before in the Supreme Court, and multiple circuit courts have already rejected this argument because the NLRB has delegated its authority to the regional directors to do these sorts of regular, run-of-the-mill sort of things, right? It is not a controversial thing to hold a union election. And so the regional director said, this is dumb. We're going to do an election anyway. They set the election for Thursday, August 7th, 2025, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That's going to be at the Customer Experience Center at the employer's facility located at 485 Short Pike Road, Southwest, Huntsville, Alabama. So if you are an employee of Navistar, International Motors, whatever they're calling it these days, then definitely save that date and go and vote. It's really exciting to see the election be called so soon. And so I wanted to take a look at some of the reporting around some of this. And, most of the reporting around the election has just been kind of straight news stuff. It's not been a whole lot of commentary, but they have relayed. There was apparently a letter that was sent to the employees of the company from the company. where they say that the company is urging the workers to reject the push, saying, quote, the company will engage directly with workers to address concerns and preserve the facility's, quote, team-based culture. Their plant manager says, our plant and company have worked tirelessly to address issues that come with rapid growth and changes in the industry and economic environment, and we are committed to continuous improvement and maintaining Huntsville as a great place to work. We have a great team here in Huntsville, and we respect the rights, opinions, and input of all of our team members and welcome their feedback. With transparency and facts, we will work to inform them why we believe joining the UAW is not in the best interest of our team culture, the Huntsville plant, or the community's future. And so, Adam, this is something that we see every time workers want to secure for themselves a modicum of power over their daily lives, over the place where they spend the majority of their working lives, right? You spend more time at work than you do basically anywhere else. And it is rational and reasonable that you say, as a worker, I want to have some control over the place that I spend the majority of my waking life. I don't want to be at the whims of a dictator. That is why the United States was formed, because we wanted to overthrow a monarchy. We wanted to rid ourselves of monarchical and dictatorial power and have that power distributed among the people. And so there is absolutely every reason why somebody would want that in their workplace. And so when people say, oh, well, the bosses are telling me that they want to engage directly instead of having a third party negotiate on my behalf, what are some of the things that come to mind to react to those pro-company arguments?
I mean, if you are comfortable as the company going directly to the workers, you should have no problem with collective bargaining, right? Because isn't that what that is, right? Workers typically elect or select their negotiations team. They send people to represent the whole unit and across departments, across jobs. And they send those representatives to the table to negotiate directly with management. And then they get a contract, something that's in writing that is actually enforceable, rather than, like you said, just like the whims, the dictates of what's going on day to day, what management just feels like from any given moment. So that, they always try this excuse of trying to third party the union. But it's the workers themselves that are the bargaining unit, right? The workers themselves are the ones who want input and who want some sort of guidelines for their working life. So, yeah, it's wild. I mean, we see this anytime workers try to organize here in the South, just about. It's very rare that companies do not respond with this sort of nonsense. But, I appreciate you shedding some spotlight on it. This is a big election. Just for context, it's 220 workers, and that may not sound like a lot compared to some of the big facilities, even here in this state. But, when we look back at the records, this is the fourth biggest filing since January 2020 in the state of Alabama. So there is some, significance to this, and it's significant that they made it to filing an election, right? Because you do have to hit certain thresholds to even make it that far. So kudos to the UAW and to the workers who were organizing at this facility for making it that far and sending them all of our love and solidarity for sure. Keep organizing, keep talking to each other, keep dispelling these myths, right? Because they want you to believe that they can directly communicate with you, but they don't want to give you the dignity that comes with a union, right? That's direct communication. When you have a union in place, you can have direct communication, and it's actually enforceable, and it means something, and you can protect some of your respect and dignity in the workplace.
Yeah, the thing that's really frustrating about the third partying of the union is that it is the workers who elect the union in the first place, elect to have collective bargaining, collective representation. It is the workers who elect their bargaining committee. the bargaining committee is typically made up of people from the plant that you know, that you work side by side with, who have asked you what you want in your contract. The bargaining committee are people that you work with. And there was one article that actually said something about, yes, here it is. We believe prioritizing flexibility. I mean, it's kind of
which means we can just make up the rules as we go along, right?
We don't want to have to commit anything to you in writing. We want you to literally be at our whim every single day. You never know what is going to be happening day after day, because I can always change the rules. I can always fire you. I can decide how to fire you. I can decide what job you're going to be doing, how you're going to be doing the job every single day, and you have no recourse. That's what flexibility means, and flexibility is like so known as that's what it means. Flexibility is anti-worker, typically. You know, it's kind of amazing that they use that specific language. But there was something else that there was another thing that
the team culture stood out to me also, because a union is fundamentally a team. Exactly. Like the workers come together and you build a team, right? Like, as someone who has experienced union and non-union environments, there is much more of a team culture in a union environment, where your fellow members, your fellow coworkers are your brothers and sisters, and you look out for one another, and you prioritize each other's safety and dignity, right? And you look out for the rules and the protections you have in your contract, and you enforce that, and you make sure everyone's cared for and treated with respect.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out something that I saw on Twitter. Yaffe, another radio host on this station. Can we call him a friend of the show? Is that what is he's been on the show a few times. Yaffe said, reacting to this news, he said, Huntsville is thriving, so of course unions want to come in and ruin it. And I really want to underscore for the listeners, for all of our listeners. And, you know, I would be shocked if none of the people who work at this plant listen to us. That would be shocking if nobody. And so particularly you, but any person who is listening to us in Huntsville, I want to underscore how much contempt for you as a working person
the host room
is laden in that statement. Because what that means is that he thinks if you, as a normal person, if you as a person who clocks in 9 to 5, does your job, if you had some level of authority, if you have some level of power over the place where you work, over the company that you produce the profits for, if you have any say-so in that company, you will, quote unquote, ruin Huntsville. And that's the kind of ideology that bosses and business politicians want to imbibe in you and in us. They want us to have a sense of that we are worse than the people who are running society, that we cannot run society, that we have to leave the running of society to our betters. And fundamentally, unionism, the ideology that is an ideology that rejects that notion, that rejects the notion that normal ass working people cannot run our lives. We reject that. I reject that idea. I believe that working people can and should have more power over the place where they spend the majority of their waking lives. And I do not believe that is a radical notion. I have some radical ideas. That is not one of them. I do not believe it is radical to believe that somebody should have some level of power over the place where they create all of the profits for. That's not radical. But that's what people like Yaffe and like your bosses and like the politicians that they have bought want you to believe. They want you to believe it's radical. They want you to believe that you are not good enough, that you are not good enough to decide what's best for you and your family. And that's really like gross, I think. I think that's pretty gross.
Yeah, and I know we've got to move on, but real quick, I can't help but think how crazy it is to think that UAW winning here, and therefore hundreds of auto workers getting better wages, better safety on the job, better benefits, a better life for their families, right? That is going to somehow ruin the city. When people drive the economy, right? The people drive the economy. As you said, these workers are creating this wealth, and the idea that some of it, just some of it, may actually go to help them a little bit more is so controversial. It really shows you that contempt that so many in Alabama have for working people, and we deserve better, and we can get better, and that's what these auto workers are trying to do. By coming together, we are stronger, and we can win a better life for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared Leggett is the president of the Marshall Engineering and Scientists Association, Mesa IFPTE Local 27. We have him on the line calling from a 304 area code, I believe. So let's go ahead and bring him on the air. Jared, thanks for calling into the show.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and I can hear you. I love saying that every time I get to introduce you to somebody, or every time I talk about the Labor Council, I always mention that the Labor Council has unions representing everybody from grocery store clerks to rocket scientists. And your union is the rocket scientist portion of it. You represent some rocket scientists. And so that's really cool, I think. And so I have a few other questions, but the first one, I guess, is there are a lot of people that when they hear, like, oh, somebody's a rocket scientist, they think that person doesn't deserve, maybe they don't deserve a union, or maybe they don't need a union because they're so special and smart and fancy themselves, and unions are for, like, production workers who have less quote-unquote skills. How do you respond to that as the president of a union of, in part, rocket scientists?
Well, what I usually tell folks at our new employee orientations is if you depend on your employment to be able to pay your bills and sustain yourself, you're working class. And, you got bosses just like everybody else. Sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're not, but they're still bosses. So you still need representation in the workplace. And just because we represent people with PhDs and who are rocket scientists, well, guess what? Some of our bosses also have PhDs and things, so it's not that big discrepancy that people seem to think there might be.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And so let's talk about, your union is a local of a larger international union. The union is the International Federation
Correct.
of Professional and Technical Engineers, IFPTE. What is IFPTE?
IFPTE is an AFL-CIO affiliate. If I remember the history correctly, they used to be the American Federation of Technical Engineers back when Local 27 affiliated with them in 71 after the Apollo era reductions in force. And they represent, professional engineers and scientists at, not only at NASA, there's a Local 27 at Marshall, there's Local 28 at the Glenn Research Center outside of Cleveland, Local 29 at Goddard, Local 30 at the Ames Research Center in California. But there's also a lot of the Navy dockyards are unionized with IFPTE, the Congressional Research Service, the GAO are there. The New Jersey Turnpike has people who are IFPTE affiliates. Local 70 is the National Nonprofit Professionals. If I remember correctly, one of their bargaining units represents people who make Action Network. I believe you're familiar with them. So it's this broad coalition, and the reason why they're called IFPTE instead of AFPTE or something like that is we have several brothers and sisters who are up in Canada as well.
Very cool. And so it's lots of different sort of sectors represented, but typically the people who are in IFPTE are going to be more white-collar workers, and so it's a union of primarily white-collar workers, like yourself at the
Yep.
and the people that you represent at the Marshall Space Flight Center here in Huntsville, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that rocket scientists are part of your bargaining unit. Who else does your union represent at the Marshall Space Flight Center?
Yeah, so our contract specifies that our bargaining unit is all non-supervisory civil servants with NASA classification code 200 series and 700 series, which largely works out to a NASA job position called an AST, or an Aerospace Science Technical. But I'm looking at our bargaining unit list now, and it's mostly aerospace engineers, but we have a lot of flight systems people. We do have a lot of people who do work in labs during the day. We do have some people who do a lot of machining for their work. We have material scientists. We have astrophysicists, heliophysicists, mechanical engineers, astrophysicists. I think I already said that one. Electrical engineers. It's a broad swath of people.
Got a couple of important things to note for folks. Many federal workers have had their collective bargaining rights purported to have been taken away by this administration. I think illegally. Those do include some IFPTE locals as well as AFGE locals. But your local at the Marshall Space Flight Center is not among them. Your local retains collective bargaining rights with the Marshall Space Flight Center. Your union contract is still in full effect. Is that right?
That is correct.
And so that's really
And
important for
the reason
folks.
why,
Yeah, go ahead.
and the reason why our collective bargaining rights are not being questioned at the moment is because the executive order that was issued back in, I believe it was February, but I may have the date slightly wrong, only affected DoD locals.
Gotcha. I thought there was some non-DoD locals, but maybe that's not the case. But I do remember that NASA was not a part of it. That's for sure.
I'd pull the EO, but I believe it was primarily DoD locals.
Yes, definitely primarily DoD locals. And so that's really important for folks to note. And that's something that, when I was giving new employee orientations and talking to workers when I was out at the Arsenal, I would tell folks that, you are working under this collective bargaining agreement that the union has negotiated that determines, in part, the conditions under which you work. So you should really probably be a member of the union and participate in the enforcement of this collective bargaining agreement and maybe the negotiation of a new one if there are some things that you would like to change about your the conditions of your work. And, the union is the place where you can go to address some of those things. How can folks join if they're listening to us and they work at the Marshall Space Flight Center? How can they go and join your union?
So they can reach out to us at ifpte27@gmail.com. Or if they're listening to this at work for some reason, they can just send me a Teams message, Jared Leggett in EV42.
There you go. And you should, really you should do that, especially, and, your dues, the dues for your union are, I think, too low. I think you should increase your dues, but I'm not in your union, so I don't get to decide that. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? I don't get to decide your dues because I'm not in your union, and so your dues are very, very low, and you retain collective bargaining rights. Your contract is still in place, and so folks who work at Marshall Space Flight Center, you should probably be a part of the organization that represents you to management and have some sort of say over that. Can you talk to us about what morale is like at Marshall right now?
It's pretty rough. About a month ago was worse. Things seem to have leveled out kind of into a sense of, well, now we just wait and see what happens. As some of your listeners may know we had a surprise leadership change earlier in the week. There's a new, the news says there's a new or an interim administrator for NASA, Mr. Duffy, I believe his name is, who is currently the administrator for the Department of Transportation as well. And it just kind of got posted earlier this week around 6 o'clock on Monday, I believe. And we've not received official notification through official channels yet. Not sure why. But it's kind of been known. There's been concerns about the budget, especially the presidential budget request came out about a month ago, a little bit more. And a lot of our bargaining unit employees saw that the president was proposing zeroing out their work. So we a lot of scientists, the science budget was getting reduced by, I believe it was in the order of 50%. And then a lot of our other employees who don't do human spaceflight work also saw pretty significant reductions in, at least in the PBR. So a lot of people were believing that their jobs were just going to be cut due to funding. That hasn't officially happened yet. And there's a lot of back and forth. I know you've been seeing with the budget, especially impacting IFPTE locals. And it looks like the Senate may be proposing basically what amounts to a continuation of the FY25 budget, which would be nice if true. But the main thing that's happening right now is the agency has decided for the next couple of weeks to offer voluntary separation incentive packages. So there's voluntary early retirement, voluntary separation incentive payments, which are like a buyout. And then there's round 2 of the DOGE DRP, Deferred Resignation Retirement Plan. And I don't have exact numbers, but the latest I heard in our bargaining unit was we've already had roughly 80 people accept that, which is getting close to about 5% of our bargaining. No, more than 5% of our bargaining unit. What am I doing?
And at one point, at one point, the deferred resignation, the DOGE thing, had a prohibition against serving in the federal government for like 7 years or something. Is that still in the new severance packages?
Not that I have seen. The main thing that's come up is that people are concerned where it has a pretty standard clause actually, as far as paperwork for when you're leaving the government,
like waiving your rights to
says, I agree.
Stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of waiving your rights stuff, which is unfortunately pretty standard language. But I get why it's in there.
Right. The last question that I wanted to ask you about is we've seen a lot of reporting about 270 job cuts at Marshall. Can you explain that number and where that's coming from?
So the number is I want to clarify, these are not job cuts, at least not technically. Right now, I believe that number is people who have accepted one of those voluntary separation incentives. I know now that's our bargaining unit, that's AFGE 1858's bargaining unit, and
management,
people who are not represented and management. I'm aware of a good handful of SESs, that's senior executive service employees, who have accepted one of these options. 270 is a little high compared to what I've seen through our official channels, but it's trending in that direction. I don't know if it's quite that high yet. There's an all hands scheduled for Tuesday that I would encourage all Marshall employees to attend if they can, where management should be giving out more official information, at least on that number. But yeah, right. 200 to 250 is a pretty good estimate so far.
Jared Leggett is president of the Marshall Engineering and Scientists Association, IFPTE Local 27. If you have questions for him, you can email ifpte27@gmail.com. Jared, thank you for coming on to the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. We're going to take a break, folks, and we're going to be right back with Last Week in Southern Labor. We're also going to be talking to David Griscom about populism. Stay tuned.
This is Elise Bryant from the Labor Heritage Power Hour. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit nalc.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller. Today, we just talked about the UAW campaign in Huntsville and spoke to the president of a rocket scientists union. We're about to talk to David Griscom, writer and co-host of Left Reckoning, about populism, all that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. You can give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a voicemail anytime throughout the week, and we might respond on the next show. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. We've also got a bunch of really cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
There you go. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Absolutely. And with that, let's go ahead and get to last week in Southern labor. Here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from July 5th to the 12th in new union campaigns. 7 workers at Velocity Electric and Automation in Grain Valley, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 124. 6 security guards at MTAC in Lorton, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Union Rights for Security Officers. 5 workers at Atos Systems in Merritt Island, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with IBEW Local 2088. 7 workers at Engineering Support Personnel in Naval Air Station, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. Some security guards among the 25 at Walden Security in Chattanooga, Tennessee, filed a petition to decertify the URSO. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the Utility Workers Union of America, UWUA, Local 335, as the union representing 27 workers at American Water, MSG, at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. 37 workers at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, filed a petition to hold a union election with Workers United. 12 security guards at Triple Canopy, a Constellus company in Herndon, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Protective Service Officers United. Workers likely pushed by their employer and with help from the National Right to Work Foundation filed a petition to decertify the Teamsters Local 385 as the union representing 40 workers at Imperial Dade in Orlando, Florida. 6 workers at Equipment Share in Grain Valley, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE Local 101S. In campaign updates, Navistar/International Motors in Huntsville, Alabama, after workers submitted a petition to hold a union election, offered up similar arguments that SpaceX and others have put forward, saying that regional directors of the NLRB don't have the authority to hold elections when the board is without a quorum. The regional director rejected that argument and scheduled the election for August 7th. In union election results, 9 workers at Amentum in Corpus Christi, Texas, withdrew their petition for a union election with the IAMAW. 17 workers at Starbucks in Ridgeland, Mississippi, voted 14-0 in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United, as did 19 at another location in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, voting 14-1. 20 workers at UNFI in Pompano Beach, Florida, voted 15-4 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 769. 21 workers at High Profile Columbia in Columbia, Missouri, withdrew their petition for a union election with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 655, and 741 workers at Brilliant Corporation in Lee's Summit, Missouri, voted 236 to 395 against unionization with the IAMAW, Local 778. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, the Supreme Court granted a stay which will allow the Trump administration to move forward with some of its layoffs while the case is decided on its merits. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, said in a statement, "This decision does not change the simple and clear fact that reorganizing government functions and laying off federal workers en masse haphazardly without any congressional approval is not allowed by our Constitution. While we are disappointed in this decision, we will continue to fight on behalf of the communities we represent and argue this case to protect critical public services that we rely on to stay safe and healthy." The AFL-CIO also condemned the decision, as did other federal employee unions. In strikes and bargaining updates, even as the Supreme Court granted Trump a win on a layoffs case, the Veterans Affairs Department announced that it is scrapping its proposal to fire 80,000 workers. AFGE celebrated the move, saying that because AFGE members across the country raised our voices, built coalitions, and took action, the plan was stopped in its tracks. The Teamsters have begun and expanded a strike against Republic Waste Services nationwide, including in Georgia. The union now says 2,000 of its members are on strike nationwide. The Teamsters represent nearly 8,000 workers at Republic Waste Services, and the union says the company provoked the strike by not settling a fair contract with its members. Teamsters General President Sean O'Brien held a town hall where he addressed UPS members regarding the company's proposed buyout plans. The union holds that the plan is a violation of the collective bargaining agreement because of the company's agreement to create, not cut, tens of thousands of jobs. While the union fights the plan, the union is encouraging members to reject the buyout plan, tell management to take a hike, and to file a grievance over the rollout of the plan. Workers at GE Aerospace, unionized with IUE CWA nationwide, ratified a new 4-year contract that includes a 17% raise over the life of the contract, along with pension and 401k protections, improved leave policies, and more. 95% of members voting at the American Postal Workers Union, APWU, ratified their new contract with the Postal Service, voting 34,867 for and 1,863 against. As a reminder, the contract looks pretty similar to the letter carrier's contract in terms of wages, but job protections are much better, with everyone hired before September 2024 being protected from any layoffs and maintaining a full cost of living adjustment, which none of the other postal unions have. RWDSU/UFCW members who work at Borden dairy plants in Chattanooga and Knoxville, Tennessee, recently ratified a new contract. The union says that the 3-year contract includes the highest ever wage increases at the dairy, front-loaded, and 2 additional annual paid holidays. Forbes has a story out about AI and misinformation among flight attendants as members of the AFA, the American Flight Attendants Association, vote on their new contract with United Airlines. The article points to several purported criticisms of the contract that are either literally completely made up or exactly the opposite of the truth. In political and legislative updates, Missouri's governor signed into law the repeal of paid sick leave that was approved by nearly 60% of the voting public in a referendum last year, as well as connecting the minimum wage to inflation. Both of those were part of one ballot measure. The Alabama Reflector has a report out about how hospitals are scrambling to cover funding losses that are soon to come from Medicaid cuts. The American Federation of School Administrators, AFSA, released a statement condemning the Trump administration's withholding of billions of dollars of approved funds for schools across the country. They say in their statement that with just weeks before students return to classrooms, school districts and state education agencies are finalizing their plans for the new school year. This abrupt and unexplained funding delay has thrown those preparations and their budgets into disarray. Districts are being forced to slash programs, freeze contracts, and halt hiring. School leaders now face the impossible task of opening schools without knowing whether the federal funds they relied on will arrive or when. The Guardian has new reporting detailing how some employers of undocumented immigrants have cut pay for their workers following Trump's ramping up of immigration raids because it has given them increased leverage over their undocumented workers. In internal union affairs, the American Federation of Teachers, AFT, has controversially launched a National Academy for AI Instruction with Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic. If we missed anything, let us know about your union updates at tvlr.fm/contact. Would love to hear about them. And now we will go to our guest. David Griscom is co-host of Left Reckoning on YouTube, also a writer and author of an upcoming book, The Myth of Red Texas, published by OR Books and The Nation magazine. David Griscom, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. This is my favorite podcast, friends.
Oh, well, there you go. I appreciate the praise. Very high praise from somebody in the podcast space. Appreciate it. We love to talk to folks from the South. You are from Texas, of course. So I had not heard about your new book until you emailed me about it this morning. And so can you talk to me before we get into your recent article that was in Jacobin about populism and the rural-urban alliance there? Really interested in hearing your thoughts on that and some of laying out some of what the article talked about. But give me kind of the top line of your book. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, the book is very related to the article we'll be talking about in a little bit. But the book is my attempt at kind of reclaiming a lot of Texas's radical and populist history. I mean, I think a lot of folks outside the state certainly don't know it, but also a lot of Texans don't. Texas had a populist party, the People's Party, that was so strong at one point it directly challenged the Democratic Party for control of the state. In fact, the Democratic Party in Texas rigged an election to prevent the populists from coming into power. Texas was also home to one of the largest socialist parties in the country. And along with that, a lot of American labor history comes from this state. So the book is my attempt to try to reintroduce and reorient the Texas labor movement and political movement here to our kind of radical history and ancestors so that we can take on the fights that we have today. There's a bit about how Texas got controlled by the Republican Party and all of that as well. So it's a kind of broad look at Texas history, trying to, push back against some of the narratives that Texas is automatically just going to be a conservative Republican stronghold.
Yeah, that there was also weren't the Colbites in the 1800s in Alabama, Adam? They were like the populists in Alabama, and there's also I think a pretty broad consensus that the Democratic Party stole that election from the populists as well here in Alabama. So lots of that sort of hidden history in the South that folks don't want us talking about, and so that's why we have to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Your article in Jacobin talks about how populism was an alliance between rural and urban folks back in the 1800s, and I want to spend a little bit of time before we go into like the meat of the article and kind of laying out some of the history that you share. You open it with an observation about the political divides in the country. that we are extremely politically divided by geography. Urban voters vote politically a certain way, and rural voters vote politically a certain way. Why do you think that is? Why are we divided by geography now? And why should we instead think of ourselves more accurately as being divided by class, which is what, which is kind of what our whole project is about and what your whole project is about? Why do those divides exist, and maybe why should we look to something a little bit different and maybe we would say more meaningful?
Yeah, I mean, the geography point kind of cuts a couple different ways. There's one, the urban and rural divide in America, and it's become something that's like the most predictive about how people tend to vote. I mean, rural America is more and more Republican, more than it has ever been. Though, frankly, a lot of other groups have been trending more Republican after the 2024 election, as I'm sure y'all have talked about. But also geography. I mean, look at American history. It is kind of wild to see how well regional politics kind of dominated, right? The South kind of going one way for a long time, being a Democratic stronghold, then later becoming a Republican one. And it is a kind of, I think, an interesting part of American politics. And in many, like a lot of things in this country that kind of seem absurd, if you look underneath the surface, it's usually an attempt to try to distract and dissuade people from thinking of themselves as member of a class. Because regionalism is something that is extremely effective because your enemies are far away, abstracted, and it creates a sense of unity between, let's say, the worker and the boss. So that has been something that has been tremendously effective throughout American history at kind of like quelling and pushing back against any kind of broad-based working class politics. And the urban-rural divide, I mean, is interesting. I mean, it's probably stronger now than it was when I wrote this article. And I think one of the facts is that America has become fairly segmented, fragmented, and as y'all know, and most of your audience I'm sure does, despite the view of American capitalism being a kind of like an urban phenomenon, most of the industrial work in this country is done in rural America. So one of the hopes and the arguments in my book and also in this article is for people to start thinking of themselves as members of working class, both people in urban areas and also people in rural areas, because they do have a lot in common. They're struggling against the same forces. They're struggling against the bosses. They are all disenfranchised. They are all disenfranchised. Whether you live in a blue state or a red state, you don't have the power that you should. And, and I think as soon as people start thinking of themselves as member of a working class, we can start to rectify that problem.
Absolutely. So talk to us about the history that your article reviews. What was the situation that you were relaying in the article, and why is it important for folks to know about that?
Yeah, I mean, so the article is a kind of a short snippet of the kind of foundations of Texas populism, which arguably are the kind of birthplace of populism. The Cleburne demands, which this article ends with, are these very radical demands that were put forward by the Farmers Alliance. And for people who don't know what the Farmers Alliance is, the Farmers Alliance was one of the largest protest organizations in American history. At its height, it had something like 1 million members. And just contextually, we're talking, the late 1800s. So a member organization like that is just unbelievably massive. Any kind of political organization today would love to have a membership like that. So the Cleburne demands is the kind of the culmination of this story. But effectively, after the end of the Civil War, the South, and Texas included, is completely decimated economically. Texas goes through a massive migration of people, not just folks coming from Europe, particularly Czech and German immigrants, but also a lot of folks coming from what we would call the Old South, right? And this is a big part of the reason Texas has the flavor and character that it does, is because we had this massive migration of particularly poor whites who were fleeing the devastation in their states after the Civil War. Well, they come to Texas, and whatever they were fleeing came right back there. So in Texas, most of the industry was around cotton production. Most of these people, black and white, were tenant farmers, and what that meant is that you were growing crops and you were paying rent effectively to a landlord or to a member of the merchant class. That ended up being a sizable portion of not just your income, but your actual yields. Most of these people spent their entire life in debt, and most people had no cash which meant that they needed to go into debt at the beginning of the growing season. So they would buy all the supplies that they needed to grow cotton or these other cash crops. And they would buy them at huge markups. I'm talking 150 to almost 200% oftentimes. And it wasn't just, seeds and tools and things like that. We're talking about food, clothes. If your children need shoes, your wife needs a dress, you're buying that on credit at these stores. Well, these stores oftentimes at the end of the year, when they look at their ledger, they'd see the farmers were still indebted to them. So these farmers would go into the next growing season in debt. And sometimes it got so bad that farmers would lose ownership of their land to these merchants. And then the merchants would take over their farm as in payment, but they would let the families still live there as renters, tenants. And they would take a portion of their proceeds as well, to pay off their future debts. So this was a system that like people couldn't get out of, and it was massive. It was all across the South, but it's particularly bad in Texas. So people got together and they founded the Farmers Alliance, which was not the only agrarian organization, but it was the one that meant the most because it started organizing people around their economic concerns. And they started to realize, oh, wait, there's a problem with the credit system. There's a problem with the merchant system. There's a problem with who we're selling it to, the way that we're selling it to them. And there's many strategies we can get into about how they kind of took on that system. But that's how the Farmers Alliance is born. And, I can get into some of the other stuff, but that's the basic kind of like setup for this story here is that people are caught into this cycle of debt and they start organizing themselves into the Farmers Alliance. And I should also mention there was also a colored alliance as well that was very influential and just as radical.
And the kind of the way that we get from this burgeoning Farmers Alliance, this really powerful Farmers Alliance to the Cleburne demands, is that the Farmers Alliance decided to, or at least some members of the Farmers Alliance decided to act in solidarity with workers who had gone on strike and explicitly tried to connect their struggles as farmers to the struggles of people in more urban and industrial environments. Can you talk about why the people that were pushing for that, why they decided to do that, and what some of the pushback that they received from within the Farmers Alliance was, and how they overcame it?
Yeah, it's very it's an interesting story. The one of the main characters, and he's not the only person, but I find him very compelling as a person and a historical figure, is this guy William Lamb, and he's a farmer and he's also a lecturer in the Farmers Alliance. And the lecturers were paid by the organization to go around town to town and recruit people to the organization, explain the ideas and strategies that the Farmers Alliance was proposing. But he realized pretty soon on, like a lot of the strategies the Farmers Alliance was putting forward were interesting. Cooperative stores, bulking, so pulling all your cotton together so that you could sell it. Anyway, not to get too deep in the weeds there, one of the things that they realized very quickly, though, is that the capitalist class is very organized against them. And if they created a cooperative store, then the merchant classes would oftentimes organize against them. So the Eastern and Northern companies that would sell like the actual goods to these stores, they would refuse to sell them to the cooperative stores. And that's just one example. Time and time again, this kept on coming up. So they started realizing, okay, well, we need a political solution to this. William Lamb had always recognized that there was a similarity between workers and workers across all stripes, from farmers to these more industrial railroad workers. Now that was controversial because what is the railroad? The railroad is modernity. The railroad is like modern urbanity, right? Like the world is changing, and these are the forces that are doing it, threatening kind of idealist, bucolic, agrarian lifestyle. So some people were very against, just like the idea of the city. But they realized very quickly that people like Gould, the famous railroad owner, was just as aligned against the interests of the farmers as he was against those striking workers. So the Knights of Labor, I'm sure most of your folks listening to this know, but if not, that was like the first major American labor union, and tried to organize across all industries as well. And they went on strike against Gould, and it was a very, very brutal strike. Their first one in 1885 was seemed to be successful, but it seemed like it was a kind of a gambit by Gould to try to encourage them to go a little further. And in 1886, they went on what is called the Great Southwest Strike, and it was a strike that went across Texas, Missouri, and the southwestern states. And it was extremely brutal. They tried to starve out those workers, right, by not paying their wages, preventing them from getting food, all of that. Well, the farmers had been talking amongst themselves, and some of them had started to join the Knights of Labor. And they realized that, they were in the same struggle. So these farmers, members of the Farmers Alliance, began to bring food to these workers, which I find to be, a very, compelling and beautiful act, right? This was like the real solidarity of like the entire working class. People really not just showing up on the picket line, but materially aiding one another. Organizationally, it created an issue in the Farmers Alliance because some of the farmers were well off, right? They were kind of being crushed by the system, but there were wealthy farmers in the Farmers Alliance. And those were the ones, by the way, who didn't like, getting involved in politics. We are strictly about business, right? That is what our organization does. So the workers, the workers in the Knights of Labor, the striking railroad workers, actually, it was a dock worker strike under the Knights of Labor that called for a boycott. And William Lamb and other members said, yeah, we should honor the boycott because we will probably have to call for a boycott too in the near future. Yeah, you had the president who condemned Lamb for doing it, and you also had the editor of the Rural Citizen, which was the major newspaper of the Farmers Alliance, calling people who call for boycotts busybodies involved in other people's business. So they condemned Lamb and the folks, supporting the boycott. But the thing of it is that even though at the top the Farmers Alliance sort of pushed back against it, Lamb was so much closer to the membership across the state, which is very active, and most significant portion of the Farmers Alliance chapters all endorsed and supported the boycott. And without getting too far ahead, this kind of struggle within the kind of against the conservative leadership, the apolitical wing of this rural workers organization, that is what kinds of leads them into politics in the next few years.
Right. And so it's a really, really cool story of folks coming together across kind of perceived differences to support, to support one another and ultimately fight together in their common interests. And so, the article is framed as like, we can take some lessons from this organization, from these organizations and the ties that they were able to make back in the 1890s. And so I want to make that explicit. What lessons should we take in particular? Because, as I'm reading the piece and as I'm thinking about it today, back then, interestingly, there were, we talk a lot about material conditions and, materially, a member of the working class is somebody who works for their wages and does not own the means of production. And so in that way, you can even say that somebody like a LeBron James is a member of the working class, even though additionally, materially, there are lots of things that separate him from somebody who works on, an automotive manufacturing line. But LeBron James also, he does primarily get his wealth from his wages, just like the rest of us. And so, that's a reason that LeBron James is part of a union, right? The NBA Players Association. But, in a way, rural and urban folks back then, there was like much more real material differences in the kind of place that they occupied in society. Like small farmers, some of them owned their lands. And one of the problems that farmers were facing back then is that some of them were being kind of kicked off their lands and turned into tenant farmers, where their situation much more resembles materially an industrial worker. But, a lot of them did still own their farms. And so that's a real kind of material difference in the kind of place that you occupy in society. And that is not the case now, right? Like almost nobody owns a farm anymore, right? Like that's just not how people in rural America make their money. People in rural America work for wages in exactly the same way that people in urban America work for wages. And yet, like as we started, there are, despite the fact that materially and economically, rural and urban Americans have never been more similar. Rural Americans and urban Americans are now potentially more politically divided than we have ever been. There has maybe never been a starker political divide between rural and urban people than there are now. And so what lessons can we take from this time and to bridge this gap that has that has come about among, again, like, sometimes I'm like sitting there and thinking about it. I'm like, they're the same. Like, you're the same. You're the same. People in the rural America and urban America are just the same. And yet, we perceive ourselves as so different. How do what kind of connections can we make to our history?
Yeah, I mean, look, and this is by design, right? This is not an accidental situation. I mean, it goes into so many of the kind of perceived differences that working class people feel, at least ones that make them feel like they wouldn't want to have solidarity with this or that group, right? This is, I mean, we all, don't need to dance around it. Like the urban-rural divide, the race divide in America. I mean, these have been extremely effective tools of the ruling class, of the bosses, to try to break down solidarity. And by the way, if you read my book and you read other labor history from this period of time, like the bosses all knew that this was a very effective tool. So, it's not just us casting aspersions. I mean, this is documented stuff. Now, today, though, I think fundamentally, I think there's a couple of things. I think we can change how we think about it, and that'll probably be an important first step. When we talk about rural America too, and I'm sure many of your listeners know this, being people who live in rural parts of the country, despite the idea of rural America primarily being, farms and things like that and engage in agriculture, I mean, a lot of rural America is engaged in industry, be it extraction, be it, production of commodities. When we saw that massive strike wave a few years back, I mean, most of those major strikes were in what we would call rural America, right? So the kind of separation in the first place between a rural person as a worker and an urban person as a worker, this is a kind of a false distinction. So there's a way to change how folks are thinking about it, how we're talking about people. When we say working class like that, it's including people in urban America and people in rural America. And I think that that's an important kind of shift. But frankly, friend, I think that, we can talk about how we should change the way that we think about subjects or how we should frame things. But the real difference between then and now is that you had a Farmers Alliance and you had a Knights of Labor organization. What we have to figure out ways to do is to get people to be engaged in political and economic organizations that represent them and their interests. And the way that you do that is by organizing around those common interests that you share immediately. And, I don't think that there is no populist movement if you don't first have the Farmers Alliance. Right? There is no populist movement if you don't have the Knights of Labor. And I think really, if we're serious about, asking me how do we kind of recreate these, we can change the way that we think about things. We can change the way that we engage with one another. I think that's an important first step, but we also need to figure out how to build those kind of large political organizations so that we have something that can actually represent those interests on the collective scale and win things for people. The point about being a member of the Farmers Alliance is it was great to have somebody standing up for you, but also it was beneficial to be a member of the Farmers Alliance because you at least, were engaged in some strategies. And even when they failed, you felt like you were participating and doing something instead of just being, pushed around and beat up by the merchant class.
I think that's really great. Yeah, you got to build organizations, and that's that's really that's why I've spent my time doing the union thing instead of doing the politics thing. So I really appreciate that advice. I definitely again recommend folks checking it out. Populism was born of a rural-urban alliance, Jacobin magazine by David Griscom. Before we let you go, I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about the floods in Texas. That has been, a big topic of conversation, and there's been some attempt to sort of blame maybe the lack of preparedness on some of the Doge cuts and things like that. And that's a really easy connection to make, right? I mean, that was I almost wouldn't believe somebody if the first thing that they thought when they heard things, people didn't know about the flood in time. If the first thing that they thought wasn't, did the NWS cuts affect this, right? I mean, that's a very that's obvious. That's an obvious connection to make. You would be strange not to make the connection, but you do also have to be committed to understanding actually what happened, because we don't care about making the connection just to score political points and to attack Elon Musk. We care about it because we want to save lives, and we care about the people in Texas. And that's not, it doesn't seem right now, and I'm sure more reporting will come out, and we'll have, as we get further out, we're going to understand more. But it doesn't seem like the Doge cuts are what caused or were the biggest cause in kind of the lack of preparedness for these floods. But there are actual political decisions that were made that could have saved lives in Texas. Can you talk to us about some of those?
Yeah, I mean, just on the Doge issue and the cuts the National Weather Service. I mean, this is a good example about why we need those kind of systems. And there's no doubt about it, by the way, that the cuts and the stress and the things that workers at those organizations have been undergoing certainly made the job harder for them. And the reason that I've been trying to focus us on what actually caused a lot of these deaths is because there's been this attempt to say the National Weather Service failed. It looks like all of their predictions were about as good as you can kind of expect, right? There is not any kind of concrete evidence that they weren't able to get the information out. In fact, what has been kind of zeroed in on by journalists who are asking the questions, talking to experts and folks on the ground, is that those requests from the National Weather Service for there to be emergency alerts sent out in Kerrville and in Kerr County, those came hours before we got that 36-foot wall of water. And what ended up happening was the breakdown was at the county level, effectively at not being able to alert people. One, because of the lack of sirens and things like that a lot of people are talking about correctly. And two, because it seems that there was an unwillingness by some of the dispatchers to implement what they call the Code Red system. The Code Red system is one of those text systems. And, there's questions about how effective those kind of text alert systems would have been in this situation in the first place. But the fact that people weren't getting these alerts until later in the day wasn't because the National Weather Service wasn't putting out the warnings in time.
Right.
And they were warning the night before that there was a flash flood. Now, it's tough in an area like that. And, even where I live, relatively close by. I live in the hill country as well. And, we get flash floods here. I get messages all the time that there's flash floods. So there are questions about whether or not those text warnings, how to communicate the severity of them. But yeah, this focus that it's the National Weather Service failed has actually been used, I think, by people in Texas politically who do have responsibility, for some of these failures, right? That was one of the first things that was coming from the state was the feds failed us. And it doesn't seem like that's the case. Now, it will get worse. Thank God that, because other places did get those warnings out, right? Right. Comfort, Texas got those warnings out to people. So thankfully, the National Weather Service was able to do their job and get those warnings out in time. It is going to get harder. When those cuts, when the effects of those cuts get deeper and deeper all across this country, there will be a consequence to this Doge stuff. So it's not letting them off the hook. It is just sort of making sure that we are looking at the whole picture instead of the easiest political story that we can tell.
Exactly. Yeah. That's such important things to underscore and say that, yeah, it's not we could see a situation, where we actually don't get the results, and cutting 5% more of the NWS staff is not going to, is going to make that more likely, very obviously. And so, I'm interested in wrapping up on, some of your observations regarding the sort of I think you called it a spiritual sickness in your video. You can there's a Left Reckoning YouTube channel. Check it out. He has a video about the floods where he talks, more in depth about some of the decisions that could have been made differently that would have saved people's lives. But you spent some time on, the spiritual sickness in this country that so many people on all sorts of sides are exhibiting. And there's both a they deserve it side coming from some people in the Democratic chattering class. And then also, there's people on the Republican side who said, you pointed out that there was a state representative or something in Texas who, even before we realized how bad it was, there were still bodies being taken away by the water, saying we must not allow this to be used to grow the government. And, there's a real, just share some of your thoughts about some of that.
I mean, look, there's two realities here. And I think that rep is named Briscoe Kane. We should call them out. In the Texas legislature, they just had a session and they didn't fund these flood systems. People have been warning about this for a long time. People have known that there's an issue for a long time. And let me just really quick political thing, and then we can get to the moral aspect, because there's been a lot of misinformation going out there, again, because I think people do want to kind of pigeonhole these things in a kind of neat and easy, so and so didn't do A, and this is why B happened, right? And there's been this thing that's gone kind of viral recently where there has been a recording of a Kerr County meeting where a bunch of kind of Trump-aligned MAGA people are showing up at this meeting and saying that they should not take money from the Biden administration linked to the American Rescue Plan, right? And it has been kind of mislabeled as oh, this is what the government in Kerr County says, and I don't want to let them off the hook. But that was a county meeting, and those were constituents coming up and saying, whatever. If you've ever been to a city council meeting or a county meeting or anything like that, it is a place where ignorance abounds. So to sit here and to say oh, look at these morons, they didn't do the right thing. Well, Kerr County accepted the Biden money. Now they spent it on a radio system and send it to the sheriffs, but that was how broad that money was. It wasn't specifically for flood. Could they have spent the money better? Sure. But this kind of misinformation that basically, out of spite, this county refused to take millions of dollars that Biden was so graciously giving them specifically for, flood protection is just wrong. And when you start doing these kind of things, you're not speaking about reality, and you actually let the folks who made these kind of decisions off the hook. So again, in Texas, for years, people have been talking about the need to invest in protection and warning systems for flooding. The county has basically talked about it many times, and there's always this kind of question about cost. The state had the option in this most recent legislative session to fund those systems, and they refused because, as they argued, it would grow the government and grow the deficit and all this kind of stuff. Now, they also gave $300 million a year for the next decade to Hollywood millionaires to make more movies in Texas. So it is kind of rich to me to sit here and talk about a scarcity mindset when it comes to protecting people from dying, when we can give money to folks like Matthew McConaughey. But that's the politics of it, man. The humanity of it is that most people aren't engaged in this day-to-day politics. And I think even if you have bad politics and maybe vote for a candidate that I don't like, I don't think that you should die in a flood. And there is this really nasty inhumanity that I think, is a big part of our politics. Being on the right, people who are celebrating the families being torn apart as ICE raids, across the country, or people on the Democrat side who are seeing crying people, and they're saying, oh, look, now they've learned their lesson. I don't think that I want to live in a country where, the stakes are that high, because the fact of the matter is, friends, I hate to say it, but I don't think that if Kamala Harris had won that election, for example, that, we wouldn't have had, massive flooding in Kerrville, because these are years long problems of political crisis in this country. And to take that on and to change that is going to take a kind of more prolonged commitment than just hoping people that do one thing correctly, on election day one time. I think that if you are somebody who sees, like I do, the deaths here as preventable and the consequences of bad political decisions. You know what your response should be to people who were crying and hurting is not to say, hey, moron, look, you deserved the death and destruction that has been wrought upon you and your family and your community, is to say, how can we help you? We need to do something so that this doesn't happen again. And then we can start placing blame on the folks who are responsible for it and be able to paint that kind of picture. But the people who are engaged in the stuff where they are seeing a suffering person suffer and saying this is great, they're not actually engaged in wanting the world to be better, to change politics. They're engaged in this very nasty American game that we've talked about now, where politics is just about deciding which group of people you want to see suffer, right? Because most people don't think that the world can be better. They just sort of want to distribute the suffering to groups that they think are more deserving. And I think that that's disgusting. And I think that we fundamentally need to change the way that we engage with our neighbors.
Yeah. That's a great place to wrap it up. David Griscom, co-host of Left Reckoning on YouTube, also a writer, author of an upcoming book, Myth of Red Texas, published by OR Books and The Nation magazine. Pre-ordering will be available soon. David Griscom, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate speaking with y'all. This is an important project, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back with Boss Watch. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With Real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, you can give us a call, or at the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We'll take calls immediately after we go into overtime. Folks, we've got a live ad read here for you. If you're a union member, you may already know about Union Plus from getting reduced rates at hotels and car rentals, but Union Plus is now running its 5th annual sweepstakes, where union members can win cash prizes, including a trip to New York City. Proceeds support Union Plus's mission to provide hardship grants, scholarships, as well as helping members access legal, health, and mortgage problems. There is no purchase necessary, but you must see the official rules at unionpowerusa.com to apply. Again, you can go to Union Plus's 5th annual sweepstakes to try to apply to win for cash prizes and things like that. unionpowerusa.com. Check it out. Really cool. I've won a Union Plus giveaway before. It is real, and you do get the check. It's very nice. Very nice. We only have a few more minutes left in the first half of the program, so we're going to do the Union Busters segment of Boss Watch first. This segment of Boss Watch Union Busters covers national updates. It's also sponsored by Labor Lab, which is an employer watchdog organization. They are committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that Union Busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are the new filings from this week. Framatome Incorporated hired Government Resources Consultants of America without providing a compensation rate. QXO and Beacon Sales Acquisition hired LRI Consulting Services for $425 an hour. Brentag Great Lakes hired the Cummings Group at $3,000 a day. 3M Prairie du Chien hired Perceptive Counseling. They did not provide a compensation rate. McLaren Oakland Health hired Heightened Solutions at $500 an hour. And ABC Plumbing Sewer Heating ABC Plumbing, Sewer, Heating, and Cooling hired Employer Labor Solutions. They did not provide a compensation rate. And there were a couple of amendments. Here's one. Reconnect Labor Relations Consultants amended their filing for Ocean State job lots to change their compensation rate to $2,300 a day. We do still have a couple more minutes left, so let's get to a couple of these stories. Starting in Florida, the U.S. Department of Labor cited an Orlando Target missile manufacturer for exposing workers to fire, burn, and inhalation hazards after a December 2024 fire at its facility, hospitalizing 2 employees and injuring still others. Investigators with the department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration found that 2 employees of Aerojet Rocketdyne, Coleman Aerospace, were severely burned, and another sustained injuries from burns and smoke inhalation while they worked on a missile component. OSHA also determined that the employer exposed workers to burn and inhalation hazards from incorrectly stored and handled explosives and from failing to classify the physical hazards of a highly reactive chemical. Aerojet Rocketdyne was cited with 1 willful and 6 serious violations, with proposed penalties totaling over $260,000. Heading over to Georgia, the U.S. Department of Labor safety investigators determined that Brazilian Stone Design, LLC, a Powder Springs stone countertop manufacturer, exposed workers to respirable crystalline silica. The department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration cited the employer, which fabricates and sells kitchen and bathroom countertops, with 7 serious citations. The employer will pay $33,000 in penalties. The employer was cited for allegedly exposing workers to high airborne concentrations of respirable crystalline silica and failing to require the use of respirators, perform fit testing and training for workers wearing respirators, conduct air monitoring, and administering an effective hearing conservation program. That is it for the first half of our program on the radio today. If you'd like to see the full Boss Watch and Last Week in Southern Labor via newsletter, you can subscribe to our newsletters at TVLR.fm. There's always more in the newsletter than we are able to get to on the radio. We've got a great overtime lined up for you. We're going to be talking to Kim Kelly, author of Fight to Win, a young reader's book about American labor history. Really excited to talk to her about that. We're also going to be talking about the Philadelphia sanitation workers strike. It's going to be a great time. So find us on YouTube and Facebook to continue listening to the program, The Valley Labor Report. You can also find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Otherwise, if you're not going to follow us online, then we will see you the next time that we're on the radio. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Solidarity forever. All right, we're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying tuned. We got a great second half lined up for you. We're going to take a break really quick, and we'll be right back. We're going to be talking to Kim Kelly.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral air. You'll either be a union man or a thug party H. Blair. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. If you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. I've got one more Boss Watch story for you that I wanted to share, and then we'll get into our micro retirement stuff. But so this one is the U.S. Department of Labor safety inspectors. It's also in Georgia. Safety inspectors cited Keystone Foods, a distributor for Tyson Foods, for allegedly failing to protect employees against fire and explosion hazards at its Camilla, Georgia poultry plant. The department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration determined that on December 26, 2024, 2 workers at the plant, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Tyson Foods, were seriously burned when a hose filled with oil ruptured, igniting the oil mist and causing a fire and explosion in the boiler room. Inspectors concluded Keystone Foods did not ensure workers followed proper internal procedures nor the manufacturer's guidelines when conducting maintenance on its boiler pump. OSHA issued Keystone Foods a citation for a serious violation under the Occupational Safety and Health Act's General Duty Clause and proposed penalties of $16,000. The union that represents workers at the plant, the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, released a statement on that with Stuart Applebaum saying, "What we've learned today is that Tyson Foods was in fact at fault for our members' near-life ending injuries, but a worker's life can never be monetarily valued, and it certainly cannot be valued at a few $1,000s. OSHA's decision to issue only modest fines in the wake of a devastating boiler explosion at Tyson's Camilla, Georgia poultry plant is the true embodiment of a broken system that lacks the teeth to protect workers. For a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Tyson, this fine is barely a drop in the bucket. Despite the gravity of the explosion and the clear danger to workers, it sends a dangerous message that even catastrophic failures in worker safety can be brushed aside without meaningful consequence. The only thing made clear today is that OSHA lacks the power, urgency, and resources needed to truly hold large corporations accountable. It took over 6 months for this decision to be issued, leaving our members, their families, and the Camilla community waiting for far too long for answers and accountability, and even now, they are left with neither. RWDSU members at the Camilla facility and across the poultry industry deserve real safety protections, real enforcement, and real respect for their lives and labor. We demand stronger standards to prevent future tragedies, timely investigations, and real penalties that match the scale of the harm done." The Southeast Council of RWDSU represents about 1,600 workers at the bargaining table at this Tyson facility in Camilla, Georgia. The RWDSU represents over 15,000 poultry workers at facilities across the southern United States, which includes workers at other Tyson facilities. All right, so there was this article that came out last week from Fast Company, which is a business magazine, and so they do like business trends. And the article is titled, "What is a Micro Retirement Inside the Latest Gen Z Trend?" And so I could not believe this when I read it, because the article said, and the first version of the article, and they changed it after some of the blowback, which was very funny. But the first version of the blowback of the article said, "While retirement typically occurs after completing a career and saving and investing for it, a new trend is emerging among Gen Z career professionals called micro retirement. Micro retirements involve taking a 1 to 2 week break from work every 12 to 18 months."
Is that what we're calling Christmas break now? That's funny. That's funny.
Gen Z is using micro retirements to avoid burnout, find greater fulfillment in their work, and enhance their overall well-being. And so, yeah, I mean, now, when I first heard the word micro retirement, I thought they were talking about like a sabbatical. Right?
That's what came to mind.
That's what came to mind. And I've had that thought too, because like you know, I really want to retire early because I don't want to retire in such a state that my body is so decrepit and I can't do anything. I can't do anything that I want to do. And I've thought about how really unfair it is that we have to sacrifice at the altar of capital basically all of the best portions of our life. And then when we can no longer do anything and we are of negligible benefit to capital, then we are let free and we can, we can have free time.
You can have all that free time to draw down your savings and
and go to the hospital and go to doctor's appointments and stuff. And so like I've been like, man, I really wish instead of maybe retiring at 60 or 65, maybe I can retire at 70. Maybe I could retire at 70, but every like 5 years take a year off of work or 6 months off of work or something. I think that would be to maybe go to school or to maybe learn something new or to live in a new part of the country and try something, just try a different trade or something like that. Just have 6 months to a year on a 5 to 7 year basis where I can kind of do whatever I want while my body is still young and I can do things, right? And so that's what I kind of thought. And so when I read this, I just almost melted in my seat because a 1 to 2 week break is a bad PTO policy. Like if you only get a 1 to 2 weeks, 5 to 10 business days off every 12 to 18 months, your employer is exploiting you. Like that's not a micro retirement. That's just enough to kind of, that's so crazy that there are people that are calling a 1 to 2 week break a quote unquote micro retirement. You deserve so much more than that. And so they changed it. And at the bottom of the article, they say, we've updated this article to more clearly define micro retirement. Oh. And it's like actually even worse. And so, I thought when I read this, right, when I read the first article, micro retirements involve taking a 1 to 2 week break from work every 12 to 18 months. I thought that was just a rebrand of vacation policy. But no, it's even worse than that. Okay? So
do they just quit their job every 12 to 18 months?
Yes. Oh. Yes. Basically, some Gen Z workers are taking unpaid leave when they haven't accrued vacation time and calling it a micro retirement. That's just unpaid leave. That's not even, you're just... That's so crazy. And so
is that real? Like, is this one of those things they say is a trend?
Yeah, I wonder about that.
I'm
so
curious.
They say that micro retirement can look like quitting a job and then finding a new job when you're ready to work again. That's like what everybody does when they quit a job or lose a job. Is you find a job when you're ready to work. That's just like, that's normal. Setting up a plan with your employer that allows you to take unpaid frequent work breaks. Now, that's a little bit different maybe than a 1 to 2 week break every 12 to 18 months. Or maybe these, business freaks think that a 1 week break every 12 to 18 months is frequent. I don't know. You never know with these people. And then taking breaks from your business if you're a business owner, which business owners have always done. So, I don't know. This is crazy. It's bonkers, and a lot of the union accounts on Twitter were like retweeting this article and saying, you don't need a micro retirement, you need a union contract. You need to unionize and get paid leave.
Paid sabbaticals.
Or paid sabbaticals. Yeah, I mean, I do know some companies that give you paid sabbaticals.
I do too. I helped negotiate it in a contract. It's great.
Oh yeah, do y'all have a sabbatical in your contract now?
Yes.
Oh hell yeah, that's so.
Yes,
that's so
and
cool.
and to their credit, it was something that was already established at the company beforehand, and we just kind of formalized it and worked out some rules around it. But it's a really cool benefit, and it's something that folks should really look into.
And so, what is your sabbatical policy specifically? Is it like 6 months every 6 years or something like that?
I'd have to reread that. I think it's every 7 years. It's on every 7 years.
Okay.
And I don't remember exactly how long the length of it is. But yeah, it's something that I know academics can sometimes experience, like tenured professors, but it's a benefit that I think unions should really consider fighting for in other spaces, because it could be the key to like long-term retention of an employee. Like maybe a sabbatical is what that person needs to give you 10 more years, like 10 more good years, right?
I am a hell of a lot more likely to work at a company for 7 years if I get a sabbatical out of it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And, and here's something that I will say about the union accounts, like quote tweeting this and saying you need a union contract. Unions today are not nearly focused enough on time off of work. There is, and so there are even many union contracts where that's not actually going to address the problem, because there are a lot of people who work for unions that are just as overworked as people who don't work in unions. They're just paid better. Right. I know, thinking about, Kim Kelly's going to be on the program here soon, and she reports a lot about coal miners. A lot of coal miners in Alabama work like 6-7 days a week, 10-12 hours a day, and they get very, very little time off. And so, that union contract isn't going to actually address the problem. And so there needs to be, and there's also, there's part of it that's coming from the members too. Like the members are not valuing, I think, and I guess it's, it's up to the members if they don't, they would rather have more money and they would rather work more, but it's just such a devaluing of our time and the human experience, I think, that our society has pushed on us, that even among so many unions, the focus is always on wages, and it's never on winning freedom from the workplace. Like we have, the average American works longer hours now than we used to. We work hundreds of hours longer than our peers in European countries. And I don't think, there are very, very few people who live in European countries who would want to take the work schedule of an American. And so, we really just do not value our time and freedom from work enough. And so that is something that even as I see, unions quote tweeting this saying you need a union contract, a lot of union contracts wouldn't address that problem. Like you would get paid more, but they don't address that problem. And they really, really, really should. That's what the labor movement was founded on, was the fight for the 8-hour day, which was about fundamentally freedom from work. We want time away from the workplace.
Right,
and
absolutely.
So
and I'll just say real quick before we move on that in my context, it was in a small nonprofit where realistically, like, where could we make a lot of improvements? And it probably wasn't going to come in some of the direct economics of salaries, right? I mean, so what we could look at, though, and so it did kind of force us to have that emphasis that you're describing of really looking at, well, if we can't just pay you $1 million, what other things could we do, right? That would make your life better and would make you ultimately a better worker. And so, I really encourage unions to think about that. I appreciated the emphasis in the Big Three strike about the 32-hour work week. I think that was important and, helped get that back in the conversation, and we need to keep it in the conversation because we have to reduce the amount of working hours per week. We have to increase the amount of paid time off that people have, period.
Yeah. So what's the verdict on the micro-retirement trend?
I didn't know I was taking a micro-retirement every Christmas holiday, but that's pretty cool. Yeah, I am convinced it is not a trend. I'm convinced that no actual real life people have ever called a 1 to 2 week break a micro retirement.
There you
I
go.
think this is internet invented by business writers.
All right, shots fired, business people at Fast Company.
Show me your evidence.
yeah.
Like if you have real people who are Gen Z who use this phrase to describe the phenomena you're describing, I'm all ears. Love to hear it.
We've got Kim Kelly on the line. Kim Kelly is a freelance journalist and author. Most recently, author of the new book, Fight to Win, Heroes of American Labor. This is the young readers edition of Fight Like Hell. Kim Kelly, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Good morning, boys. I'm so glad that I was not late because you know how much I love mornings.
Yes, well, we got you at it's 12:15 your time, isn't it?
Look, I'm freelance, you know.
We don't judge people's schedules.
Micro vacation.
That's right. Adam doesn't judge people's schedules.
She was on micro retirement.
She was on micro.
That's exactly.
So this book is the young readers edition of Fight Like Hell. And when I was reading about it, or when I saw some of your promotion of it, when I heard young readers edition, I thought we were talking like picture book, like I'm going to read to a 4-year-old the pictures. But this is a real proper book. There are words in here. Are there even any pictures?
They're at the back.
Yeah, there are pictures on the back. Yeah, so who is reading? There are pictures in the back. Look at this. We've got Bayard Rustin. We've got women garment workers, Lucy Parsons, Mother Jones. So who is the audience for, like, what age range is going to be reading this book?
So Fight to Win is middle grade, which is a term that I learned after I wrote the book. Basically, the target audience is between like a precocious 8-year-old or up to like 14 or so. Or like I've been telling people, if you're a full-on grown-up and you just don't want to go through like a 400-page labor history book like the other one I wrote, pick this one up for a little easy reading.
There you go. And so what is it about? We've talked to you about Fight Like Hell on the program before, and so just run through, some of what that book is about and some of the changes that you made for the Young Readers Edition.
Sure. It was so much harder to write than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a breeze. I'll do it in 3 months. I was wrong, because it turns out writing for younger people, kids, literal kids, is a little different. I already try and keep my writing style as accessible and kind of inclusive as I can, but you have to break things down a little bit more for an 11-year-old versus a 30-year-old. And I had a good editor who helped me out with that. But this one, it is different from Fight Like Hell because it's more based, I don't want to say characters because they're real people, but it's more a series of like kind of short biographies, like intro biographies, a lot of important people. And I did add a bunch of new characters that I couldn't fit into Fight Like Hell, or that, for whatever reason didn't quite make the cut. So I did get to sneak like a whole section on Emma Tenayuka, a Chicano labor organizer in Texas in the 30s. I got to do a whole thing on, let me see, who else is new? Oh, I snuck in Eugene Debs because the idea of Fight Like Hell was to go for lesser known or under discussed parts of the labor movement history, and like everybody knows Big Gene. Right. But in this, if you're 11, you might not know.
Yeah, you might not know about Eugene Debs if you're 8 or 9 or 11 years old. That's true.
Yeah, I don't know what your parents are doing if you don't, but benefit of the doubt, So yeah, it's a little bit more digestible. I kind of in the back of my head thought that it would be really handy for teachers to use for lesson plans. Like, if you're doing a unit on interesting women in history or Black folks in history or Indigenous folks in history, like you could kind of pull it apart and take what you need from it. but also hopefully it's just fun to read. Like if you like my writing style as is, it's like that, but just I explain things a little bit more.
And so what was the sort of impetus for making a young readers edition of Fight Like Hell?
So this is I joke that I'm just sort of constantly giving myself homework. I was literally just thinking about it one day, and this was back when Twitter was something that was useful and kind of a semi-decent place to spend your time. And I used to just sort of tweet things into the void, tweet thoughts out to see what would happen. Sometimes I could ensnare an editor or, get a conversation going. But I just kind of tweeted out, what if I did a kid's version of Fight Like Hell? And then went about my day. And I came back and I had gotten all these messages and all all these responses like, please do that, you should do that. And a couple like book publishers, like indie publishers had messaged me about it, like, hey, you should do this. And I was like, oh gosh, what have I done? And I talked to my agent. He's like, you can do that. Like, we could talk to your actual publisher that you already have and see if they want to do that. And they let me do it. It was, yeah, kind of wild. But awesome. I'm really glad I got to do it because it's something that felt needed. Not that I'm an expert on children's literature, but I know that there are not that many books like this for adults out there. So I figured there can only be so many for smaller people. And I just thought, well, why the heck not?
Right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I'll be sharing it with parents and educators I know for sure. And I guess when I get home, I'm going to be quizzing my daughter about Eugene Debs and just testing where she's at right now. And we'll grow from there for sure.
Well, where can people go to find it?
It's available wherever books are sold, right? So I did, speaking of giving myself homework, if someone is interested in getting a signed copy, I do have a real website that I made now.
Whoa.
I know, it only took me, it took me a while. But if you want, you can get a copy from me. My website's kim-kelly.com. But also you can get it from your local independent bookstore, your local library, kind of wherever, just not Amazon. They have it, but we pretend not to acknowledge that.
There you go. I think you can also you'd have to go to the ILWU's like Twitter or Facebook page or something to find the code, but you can, if you buy a book at Powell's bookstore online and you use the ILWU's like affiliate code or something, 15% of your purchase goes to the union's strike fund, which is really funny. I don't know how they got their employer to agree to that, but that's I
love it.
That's been something that I've tried to use when I can.
Yeah, I've done that more than once. Yeah, I love that.
So
I love it.
All right, well, there you go. Wherever books are sold, the Fight to Win, Heroes of American Labor, the Young Readers edition of Fight Like Hell by Kim Kelly. Go buy it. Check it out. We're going to talk about something a little less fun now, and that is the sanitation folks in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, went on strike. Kim, you live in Philadelphia, so could you give us like a sort of overview of what happened, who, what, when, where, why, sort of thing?
Okay, so as your listeners, well, you never know, so maybe people use subtitles. As your listeners will know, typically when a labor union's contract expires, the union and their employer will enter negotiations to figure out what the next contract's going to look like. So DC 33, which District Council 33, they're part of AFSCME here, which you'll all be familiar with. Their contract was up. They actually had gotten a 1-year contract extension last year because we elected a new mayor, and she basically was like, give me a minute, and they begrudgingly kind of allowed that. They did get a small raise as part of that extension. So they're negotiating a new contract. DC 33 is one of Philadelphia's 4 municipal workers unions. They are the lowest paid. They are the only majority Black city workers union. Historically underpaid, undervalued, and they cover sanitation workers and also really a litany of other professions, from airport workers to people that work at the water department and 911 operators and medical examiner employees and library assistants, library security guards, kind of it's a wide net, a wide range of people. And so they elected a new union leader, union president recently, and he was really determined, like, we're gonna get a raise, we're gonna get something out of the city, because this is when I say they're underpaid, like the median salary for a DC 33 worker is about $46,000. And that's like Philly, it's not New York, but the cost of living is rising. And a lot of these folks, like that's a poverty wage, that is literally, it is several $1,000s less than is required, than one adult with no children needs to have like a living wage here in Philly. And of course, people have families, people have, like, it's rare, that you're just the one person, right? So they need that money. They need a lot. They need, the mayor's also trying to their health plan, all these details. Contract negotiations broke down. They decide, okay, we're going on strike. And they have not struck, DC 33 has not struck since 1986. So this is a big deal. And immediately they hit the picket lines, and the sanitation workers, obviously they're not working. So the most visible sign of the strike is the trash. It's hot. It's like we're kind of in the midst of a heat wave, and it's been really rainy, and trash just started piling up and piling up and piling up. The mayor had identified these 63 temporary dump sites, telling people, oh, just take your trash there. And they had these contractors they were paying a lot of money to take that away. And of course, like we're a big city. There's 1.5 million people that live here, generate a lot of trash. Those little dumpsters were no match for the garbage in Philadelphia. On top of like people dropping out tires and contractor waste, and like people got a little wild with it, as they should. This was right. The mayor, like, there's no reason that this strike had to happen, but the mayor has a very strong personality, and she tends to take things very personally, and she was not happy about this strike, and so it was an 8-day strike. It got pretty ugly. The mayor and her administration really leaned heavily on injunctions, on court actions to force, injunctions, that's that magic dirty word that we know all too well, to force different sections of that workforce back to work. Like first they got the 911 operators, and they got some folks at the water department. Here's a colorful one. I think on last Tuesday, they got an injunction forcing workers at the medical examiner's office to come back to work because the corpses were piling up in the city morgue.
Gosh.
So that
sounds like they do important work.
Yeah, a little bit. During that period, God, this broke my heart. This 19-year-old young man in a Germantown section of the city, he got shot in the face. He didn't make it, and his body was left in the street for hours because there's nowhere to put him. And like there's some really ugly, very personal aspects of this strike for the people of this city and for the workers. They kept up, the workers kept up the joy and their resolution on the picket line. It was so hot. Like folks showed up to bring them supplies. Folks showed up to support. There's a ton of local support. Really, the overwhelming, I guess, narrative that I would see talking to people, checking on social media, just kind of get the general vibe was that people were angry that the mayor was not giving these people what they're asking for, because they're asking for a pretty small raise. Like they came down from their initial asking for 5%. And when you're making $40-some thousand a year, that's not a big leap. And one thing I do want to emphasize, because I had found out about this kind of as things were going on, the city, we're a poor city, but we currently have a budget surplus. The mayor has allocated of $882 million. The mayor has allocated $550 million of that for these 4 municipal workers union contracts. Divided evenly, there's like $20 or so million that could have been allocated to DC 33 in this deal. But one of those city workers unions is the police, and she's very close with the police and has actually the current budget, like city budget proposal that they're sitting on, is gives the police department an enormous amount of money, 890, just big numbers, including over $1 million for new uniforms. So this is my little conspiracy theory. A part of me thinks that she wanted to make sure she had more in the kitty for her pals in the police, and avoided giving these workers the very modest raises they're asking for. But
it really was it really was crazy. I was shocked at how little they make in the sanitation workers make in Philadelphia. I mean, it's like the same. I think it's even less than many sanitation workers in Huntsville, Alabama make. And Philadelphia, obviously, the cost of living is higher. And when I saw that the union was asking for less than a 5% raise, I mean, that's so beyond reasonable. The idea that the mayor would force a strike so as to not concede to a 5% raise for some of the lowest paid sanitation workers in a major city in the country. I mean, it's just so gross. And we saw even with that as the background of the strike, like that the mayor forced the strike so she didn't have to concede to the super, super, super reasonable demands of the union, which again, less than a 5% raise. Even with that as the background, and with these being some of the lowest paid sanitation workers for a major city in the country, we still saw these fucking abundance freaks get on twitter.com and talk about how unions are cartels and you're not obligated to participate in a strike, and celebrating the people who were scabbing. There was this one TikTok of somebody who was going around in like an SUV and she was, videoing herself. A car full of trash. And she was like, give me $25 and I'll take your trash to the dump site. And it's like, I cannot imagine, even like outside of a strike. I mean, scabbing is, immoral, evil, and wicked, and a stain on your soul, and you should repent and all of that stuff. But just outside of that, outside of the immorality of it, I can't imagine putting a stranger's trash in my car for $25. And that is not an observation, specific to me. There were other people saying that. But, these abundance freaks getting on there and talking about how this is, how the sanitation workers are asking too much. I mean, how was that? Was any of these like liberal types? How much of that kind of made it from twitter.com to real life in Philadelphia? Like, did that hit with any of the folks that were on the picket line, like the sanitation workers? Like, did any of them see that, oh wow, some of these people are celebrating this strike for like because they're on the side of the boss, and these are like power brokers in the Democratic Party. I mean, did any of that like get out into real life, or is that just something that is fortunately relegated to twitter.com and is just frustrating to people on the website?
Thankfully, I don't think anybody normal in Philadelphia pays attention to that.
Okay.
Though I did see some discourse from people like me who are not normal, who spend too much time online. Mm-hmm. I did see some Philly folks, like who are kind of, engaging in very disrespectful discourse with these ghouls online, because it's just insane and infuriating. And I did see, like, not really as a part of that specific strain of nonsense, but you mentioned that one with the SUV. There were like a good handful of people that were trying to hustle like that and make a little bit of money. And that's it's Philly's a really poor city, and like, yeah, you gotta get your bag, but like $10 a load is not gonna get you where you need to be. And also you have a car full of trash. And also, like, if these like the sanitation workers, they know what's in that trash, and it's not good. They have to deal with it. It's gotten on them. You don't want that kind of surprise in your car for $10. No. You are not like, you don't have the range for that. And it was interesting, because I watched of all things, like I spent all the time on TikTok trying to see what kind of the vibe was, because there some of the workers were on TikTok sharing, you know, the picket line and their own feelings, and I would go through the comments to see, like, part of me was like, everyone better be freaking cool about
That's
this.
right.
By the near the end of the strike, like after we hit a week, I did see some people, not a majority by any stretch, but I did see some people start being like, man, just like the mayor said she's offering all this. The mayor said that, like, y'all gotta get back to work, because the mayor really just took advantage of the situation, I think, to try and sort of she tried to make it seem like the deal she was offering was historic, was huge, that she was doing like she tried to sort of imply that they're asking for too much. And I think, again, because she took it so personally, because one of the narratives that emerged during the strike, like led by the workers, was just mentioning her salary and the salaries of a bunch of the essentially cronies that she had added to the city office since she got elected. And like the numbers are kind of grim. Like, she makes more money than the mayor of New York City. And she got a cost of living raise last year. And that's essentially what the workers were asking for. But 3 point whatever percent of, let's see, like $280,000, $260,000 looks a lot different from the average sanitation worker salary, which is between $39,000 and $42,000 a year. So she tried to defend that, and really it was not a good look. But some of the information, like infographics that our office were putting out, were, I think, misleading enough that by the end of the strike, some people were like, well, like the mayor's office said they're offering y'all like 15%. Like, you know, you just, you know, the misinformation campaign that was waged by the city, I think, did kind of get a little dicey in terms of public opinion by the end of it. Because also there's trash everywhere. And also some members of, I would say, like the local, like, Black political establishment had kind of come out and had been saying that I guess the sort of vitriol with which the mayor was being kind of approached, because like she was being awful to the workers, but she is also our first Black woman mayor. So it became, I think it might have started to become a little bit uglier in certain ways as the strike went on too, so that might have factored into the equation.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
I saw some of that. Obviously, I wasn't as plugged into it as you would have been. And you know, the idea that maybe some of the vitriol was elevated personally because she was a Black woman is not, you know, that doesn't sound far-fetched to me, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. But also, it is just true that she was doing bad things to the workers, and that things get personal in a strike. And, you know, one of the people that came out talking about this was Ryan Boyer, the Building Trades Council president in Philadelphia, talking about how, you know, reprehensible, or whatever words he used, the conduct from the strikers towards the mayor was. And it's like, Jesus, dude, like, you're a union leader coming out condemning the rhetoric of strikers. I mean, you know, come on, dude. Like, that's just, that's so weird.
Well, speaking of Mr. Boyer, there was a really great article in the Inquirer yesterday that kind of laid out how some of our local unions, including several building trades unions, Mr. Boyer is the head of the building trades union council here, they scabbed. They performed scab labor during that strike. Mr. Boyer was not able to be reached for comment for that article. And so one just has to think about people's motivations when it comes to putting out statements and inserting themselves into conversations. And not for nothing, yes, our mayor is a Black woman, that rules. But these workers, it was mostly Black women and Black men who were on that picket who are being subjected to these poverty wages. Like it's like it's not my place to say that much about it, but I will just kind of say that the big picture is a little bit more complex than some of that that discourse sort of acknowledged.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The only majority black union in the city government. And so, it's like it's just so it's so bizarre, especially for a union leader to be commenting on rhetoric during a strike. Like, maybe that's an appropriate conversation to have within the union hall, right? I mean, like that's totally that's not unreasonable for a union leader to be, maybe you like say like, okay, guys, like, come on, let's be a little bit more respect. But that's like an internal conversation. That's not something that you go to the press with during a strike. There's only one thing that commenting about strikers' behavior during a strike does, and it's that it benefits the boss.
Sure. And so Ms. Parker, she's real close to the building trade. She is. It's so I just have to get out that it's so weird that she was doing this, because she up until now has had this very like sort of self-projected but also fairly valid like pro-labor, pro-union reputation. She was elected essentially because the building trades really rallied around her. And it's just I think it caught a lot of people off guard, because we think of her as like she's she's pretty pro-union, like she's pro-worker. She comes from very like working class and poor background. Like she worked her way up to that position, so she knows what the struggle is like. So it really caught a lot of people off guard, and I think it also exposed some of the cracks within the Philly labor movement, the Philly political machine that aren't that pretty to look at.
Right. And so the strike is over for now. There is a tentative agreement that members are reviewing and will be voting on at some point as they go back to work. What's in the tentative agreement, and how did the city get the union to agree to it?
So I think it was super late Tuesday. I think it was like 4 a.m. on Wednesday morning this past week that they came to an agreement. And it's essentially, economically, there was not a lot of movement. The final version of this tentative agreement came out to 3% raises over the 3 years, which obviously is much less than the union is asking for, plus a one-time $1,500 bonus subject to tax. And they added an extra step for long-time workers. So some of the more tenured employees, I think, will benefit from a little bit more of a boost, like a couple percent. So economically, it's kind of like big whoop. Like you'll get a few extra grand over the course of several years. It's probably like $40 a paycheck. That part, not great. The union was able to fend off some of the city's more kind of egregious non-economic proposals. Like they were able to protect their health care. They're able to kind of get rid of some junk like around their like sick days and various things like that. I have a whole analysis like on my desktop that I'm trying to like peek at right now. Essentially, it was a small step forward, but it was not what they deserved, what they're asking for. I don't think it's being framed as a little bit of a win because they got a little bit more money, and they did save some important parts of their contract, but it's not great. I think my opinion, I think it's fairly accurate, is that the union realized that they were about to lose leverage because it sounds like the mayor was preparing an injunction that would force the sanitation workers back on the grounds of public health, because like the trash was a little wild. It was I'm sure you've seen photos. It was not good. And one thing that is not for nothing too is the worst pileups were in like lower income neighborhoods and predominantly Black neighborhoods, because some of the fancier neighborhoods like in Center City or like the more gentrified parts, they have private trash pickup, so they were fine. And so the people that were feeling the brunt of this, we're not very happy about it. Like it's the last thing you need. Like I lived a few blocks away from one of the sites, and it was gnarly. So it seemed like the union kind of read the writing on the wall. They're like, look, if we lose the sanitation workers, that's a major bargaining chip. If they keep hitting us with these injunctions, like they're going to chip away at our leverage. It was also the first week that the workers were going out a paycheck. So they're paid bi-weekly. The first week was a not paid week. This is the first week that they're going without a paycheck. And the strike pay was, I think it was only like a couple $100, like some grocery money. And this is like what I like, that is like, yes, strikes are about struggle and sacrifice and making it work. But if you are making $1,800 and your rent is $1,200 and you miss the $800 week, that is an immediate problem.
Right.
And this was 9,000 workers. And it was, I think the city administration just kind of broke them. Like, I think that in order to prevent more suffering for their members, the union leadership decided like, this is kind of our best bet. And it was contentious. Like, I know that there was, people were not happy. Like, the first thing that Greg Boulware, the president of the union, said, like when the press descended on him once he left meeting, was like, no one's happy about this. Like, this is, so it just sucks, you know?
Do you know the timeline for the ratification?
Monday is when they vote.
Okay.
And one interesting wrinkle to that is AFSCME DC 47, which represents the white collar city workers, kind of DC 33's counterparts. They are holding a strike authorization vote right now because their contract is up. And so there is theoretically a world in which they vote to strike and DC 33 members vote their contract down and things get a little hot. But it depends on how much appetite there is to keep it going. It depends on, I guess, the analysis of, will the public be behind us again if we go out again? It's going to be interesting. And I threw a fit because there wasn't a ton of nationwide attention on what was happening until the very end. But this is I am paying very close attention because I'm a labor journalist that lives in Philly, but also like, these are my neighbors. Like, that's the library I go to. That's my subway stop covered in trash, you know? Like, this is personal.
Yeah, Mindy Iser, who's also a labor writer in Philadelphia, her sister was getting married during the strike and decided not to get her marriage certificate before her wedding to support the striking workers, and the Inquirer wrote about that. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's the type of energy we need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kim Kelly, freelance writer, author of the new book, Fight to Win, Heroes of American Labor. You can get the Young Readers edition of Fight Like Hell anywhere books are sold. Is there anything else that you want to mention before we let you go?
Oh, I don't know if you have, are you able to share links and stuff in your show notes?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, I hate to end on like a little bit of a bummer note, but during the strike, during the first week, this incident didn't get that much attention. So I am making it a personal mission to get it some attention. Two striking DC 33 workers who were picketing in a nighttime location, because there were a couple 24-hour pickets. They were hit by a drunk driver on the picket line. Yeah. And one of them, Tyree Ford, he pushed they're actually they're engaged, and a man and a woman, and Tyree Ford, the man, he pushed his fiance out of the way, so she has superficial injuries. She's also pregnant with their son. He took the brunt of that hit, and he's in the hospital right now, and he is all jacked up, like shattered pelvis, shattered face, like his spot. There's a lot going on, and there's a GoFundMe for Mr. Ford that's going around, because obviously he's a sanitation worker, and obviously he can't work while he's piecing himself back together. So I've just been trying to get some attention on the GoFundMe. I will, the fellows will put it in the show notes. If you have a couple bucks, that would be a great way to show some support to a striker that literally put it all on the line and saved 2 lives while he was at it. He was not going to be able to go back and enjoy that 3% raise anytime soon.
Yes, we will pull that. I'm going to your Twitter now, and I'm going to get the links. So we'll put that in the chat as well as the show notes. Kim Kelly, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right, folks. Kim Kelly, freelance writer, journalist, labor reporter, and author. Always love talking to her. Yeah, here is the GoFundMe. The title of the GoFundMe is Tyree Ford, Philadelphia's DC 33. Probably if you Google that and GoFundMe, then you would be able to find it. And I just put it in the chat. So if you can, make a donation. I'm sure his family would appreciate that, and we would too. We've got a caller on the line. This caller is from a 714 area code. Caller from a 714 area code. We'll go ahead and bring you on the air. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Buenos dias, comrades. Revolutionary greetings to everybody. Hope this finds everybody well. Jose Francisco Negrete, rank and file Teamster 952 out here in Orange County. Also part of Teamster Mobilize and Labor for Palestine. LA, OCNI. Well, living out here in basically a guerrilla style military occupation that's happening in Southern California. I want to give some brief dates of things that have occurred and things that will occur. Yesterday, there was a press conference at Placita Vera, a historical place, when it comes to Los Angeles. And sorry about that. I'm just barely waking up.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
So on August 12th, for August 12th, there's going to be a general strike. It was called by the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Chila, and SEIU's Local 721. So I just hope everybody, more information is going to come out, but put that in your calendar, lock that in, put that on your iPhone calendar or whatever calendar you have. But August 12th, there's going to be not necessarily a general strike. Will probably be like a day without an immigrant or something like that. But just please be on the lookout for August 12th. And then this past Monday, July 7th, we saw basically a military tactical practice at MacArthur Park, an historic park in Los Angeles. And that was, the community came out, members from Unión del Barrio, South Defense Coalition, and all other organizations came out, and community members came out to protest it. And I saw an interview where I'm glad finally the community saw that there's no such thing as a sanctuary city. Because why? Law enforcement will protect their own, regardless if it's local, state, or federal. They'll come and protect their own. And we've seen images of the LAPD, LA sheriffs cracking down on protesters because they're protesting outside of the detention centers where the Gestapo are just kidnapping car wash workers, day laborers, anybody that they have reasonable suspicion, in air quotes, of being of a undocumented worker or person. And last week there's a coalition that came about, and we launched a Home Depot boycott. So as of last week, we're urging the public to not shop at Home Depot. Spend your money elsewhere, because Home Depot has been complicit in these Gestapo kidnappings that are happening. Because one tactic that the Gestapo uses is they'll park a car overnight, and they'll park it overnight, and then the next morning if they see 10 day workers or more, they call it in to arrest, to kidnap these day workers. They're just looking for a job. But there's been patrolling Home Depots and passing out Know Your Rights cards, telling the day laborers, look, if you get detained by the Gestapo or ICE, like the media likes to call them. I just like to call them the Gestapo because it Trump's personal Gestapo. That do not mention your names, do not sign anything, and if you see somebody recording, give a phone number of a loved one so we could get in contact with that individual. So we urge the public, do not shop at Home Depot. If you see a day laborer, talk to them or tell them, look, if they come and they kidnap you, do not sign anything, do not give your names. And if you see somebody recording, please give a phone number for a loved one, because it's vital that we get in contact with their loved one. But I'm glad to see out here in the occupation of Southern California that there's community patrols. Los Angeles has one. It's called the Community Self-Defense Coalition. Orange County started one. Same thing. Orange County Community Self-Defense Coalition. There's one in the Empire. I don't know about San Diego, but I think San Diego probably has one. And then we just saw on Thursday the tactics that they used in MacArthur Park were used at a cannabis farm in Ventura.
Mm-hmm.
And people are upset about the violence, that some of the community members used. But if your loved one's being kidnapped and you see everybody that's heavily armed, what is the public supposed to do? What is a loved one supposed to do? My mother and my father came here and sacrificed everything. My father passed away when I was 24, around there, 23, 24. Then my mother held it down for all those years. The sacrifice that my mom gave to me and my sister. And you're going to tell me I'm supposed to act peacefully? Come on. The Gestapo are initiating this violence by the sheer presence and the sheer way they conduct themselves towards the public. We have seen them put their knee on the back of undocumented workers. We've seen them put their knees on the head of undocumented workers. We've seen them beat undocumented workers. And you're supposed to tell us not to act peacefully? It's like a bully. A bully goes up to you and punches you. What are you supposed to do? You're either going to do two things: run away or fight. And I applaud all those comrades out there in Ventura County that stood their ground, and they held it down for I think it was probably more than 10 hours from the morning to the night. And they held it down. And I'm glad to see that the LA judge granted temporary restriction on the Gestapo's operations out here. But like Tom Holman said, they have any reasonable suspicion, they're gonna take somebody.
Well,
and out here and go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just you go ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was going to say that alone shows who they're targeting. And I'm glad I saw some video of something that happened in Brooklyn. The Haitian community stood up. Haitians and Palestinians have a rich history of resistance. And when we're talking about the Palestinians, all these equipment, these technological equipment that are being used, facial recognition, to recognize some, a protester. That equipment is being used on the Palestinians. Now it's being used on us out here too. The equipment to jailbreak a phone that the Israeli government created is being used on us out here in Southern California. We know about Pop here. So when some of us talked about the struggles out here and connecting them, that they're connected to the struggles of Palestine or other places in the world, and some people thought it's far-fetched. It's not far-fetched. It's the reality. And we have to understand, when we say free Gaza or free Palestine, we're talking about ourselves out here as well, because their struggles are connected to our struggle. They're under a military occupation. We're under a pseudo-military occupation right here. But the scary part about it is we don't know where they're at. They'll just pop up out of the blue and snatch people. And this is why it's vitally important to understand these two struggles are connected. Out there from Gaza to LA, they're both interconnected.
Right. Jose, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that the Tom Homan's quote about reasonable suspicion, I mean, folks should go and look that up. I don't have the clip pulled for this, but it is super gross and scary. He talked about how the an immigrant's personal appearance is reasonable suspicion. Their occupation and their appearance is reasonable suspicion. And if that's not just saying we are going to profile people, I don't know what is. And the military look of these folks, I mean, they have to feel if they have any sort of pride as, men and women, they must feel ridiculous, outfitted like they're going to, storm Fallujah to kidnap grandmothers and children. The Guardian, I mentioned this in Last Week in Southern Labor, but I wanted to read a little bit about from this article since we got a call on this. The title is Undocumented Builders Face Unchecked Exploitation Amid Trump Raids. It's More Work, Less Pay. The author is Michael Sinato. He's a good reporter on the labor beat for The Guardian. And he talks about how he interviewed one undocumented worker who said that when Donald Trump returned to office in January, Regalio said his employers cut their rates by 30 to 40%. Other laborers told him that they had endured similar treatment. They decreased the pay by piece because they know most of the tile setters don't have Social Security numbers, so they take advantage of that. We are in their hands. It's more work and less pay. Sinato mentions that with approximately 2.9 million U.S. construction workers, about 34% of the workforce, foreign-born construction sector lobbyists have publicly urged the Trump administration to soften their hardline stance on immigration. Advocates for workers' rights say some operators in the sector are using Trump's crackdown to abuse undocumented workers. They mention that undocumented workers are unlikely to lodge an official complaint. And so since people don't want to say anything because they don't want to be put on the radar, they're also getting retaliated against if they do say something. And he reported on a roofing company in Washington was raided by ICE earlier this year after workers filed safety complaints, with the fear of retaliation stemming from that case spreading to other job sites and leaving workers reluctant to speak out and file complaints against abusive work practices. And we've seen this, in some of the right-wing commentary about the raids on the cannabis farms. ICE and the DHS folks are talking about how, we've identified unaccompanied minors who have been abused on this farm plantation sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, no doubt. I've got no doubt about that. And so what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to these children that you have rounded up now that you say are the victims of trafficking? You're going to send them back to where they were trafficked from. And I'm supposed to believe you give a shit about them? I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It's so gross. And any time that we see a situation like this, if an undocumented immigrant, adult or child, is abused at work, what the process should be that when they come forward and alert the authorities that their employer has abused them and broken the law, their employer should be put in jail. Their rights to ownership of the company should be forfeited, given to the undocumented immigrant with immediate legal status for the immigrant. That's how it should work. If we had anything approaching a just society, that's what it would look like. We would throw people who abuse immigrants and children in jail and give the things that they own to the people that they abused. That's what justice would say. And actually, I talked to Dale Jackson just yesterday on his radio program in Chattanooga, and I laid out that scenario. He was like, "No, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, that would probably be a good policy. Actually, if we did that, that would probably discourage employers from breaking the law." And I was like, "Yeah, it would. It for sure would."
But nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do that. I also wanted to point out an Economic Policy Institute report about how Trump's deportation agenda will destroy millions of jobs. They say that if the administration follows through on its goals of deporting 4 million people over 4 years, there will be 3.3 million fewer employed immigrants and 2.6 million fewer employed U.S.-born workers at the end of that period. Employment in the construction sector will drop sharply. U.S.-born construction employment will fall by 861,000, and immigrant employment will fall by 1.4 million. The deportations will eliminate 500,000 child care jobs. And they say that this matters because deporting vast numbers of immigrants from the United States is a major goal of the Trump administration. However, immigrants are an integral part of the U.S. labor market, and an increase in deportations will result in fewer jobs for both immigrant and U.S.-born workers because it's like the economy is interconnected, and you can't rip out billions of hours of productive capacity from the economy and not have results cascading through the workforce. And we've actually seen this. You know, the Trump administration has been touting the June jobs report, which they say shows 2 million U.S.-born workers have gotten jobs under Trump and 500,000 immigrant workers have lost jobs under Trump. And what they leave out is the fact that those are not seasonally adjusted numbers, and that actually, if you look at last June, the labor force participation rate for both U.S.-born workers and immigrant workers has fallen by like a percentage point each, which is not small when you're talking about the labor force participation rate of the entire country. Okay, let that sink in for a second. A smaller proportion of the U.S.-born labor force is working today than they were a year ago. Similarly for the immigrant-born workforce population. And so this deportation agenda has not been good. And I want to highlight some of the just really, really sort of fascistic stuff that's been coming from the administration. We're going to play clip 1, which is a promo video from the Department of Homeland Security that is really, really spooky. Let's play clip 1.
There's a Bible verse I think about sometimes, many times. It goes, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us?"
Can roll on for a long time, roll on for a long time. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down.
And I said, here am I. Send me.
Just fucking freaks, dude. I mean, like, insane, embarrassing, gross, fascistic, obviously. And so I wanted to juxtapose that with a video from friend of the show, Drew Morgan, a comedian who, kind of a little bit did a bit that looked kind of a lot like that. Let's play this clip too from Drew Morgan.
Get ready with me as a federal ICE agent. Let's go. All right, let's hit those morning stretches first. That's how we get ready. We don't want to pull a back muscle while we're cosplaying as a badass. This right here is the warrior pose, one of my favorite things to do, pose as a warrior. That's the kidnapper. Keep your hands low when you're doing that one as if you're doing it to a child. That's the trigger finger stretch. Very important. Okay, onto the fit. We got a very basic white tee. It says freedom reigns because we're immune to irony, fatigues, combat boots, of course. Next, we got our tactical vest. I got a black one over white. Usually I like to put whites over blacks. That's a rule of mine, but I did make an exception in this case. You'll notice this one's 2 sizes too small. That's because I'm a big, strong man. I'm really strong. The idea is to look like what's scary to a 12-year-old because that's mostly who we're deporting. Finally, we got our mask and hat combo. You can get the mask at any gas station right where you get the dills I snort. And you want to pair that with a black hat. This one I got in Jerusalem when I was over in Israel training on how to be a moral colonizer. Very, very good stuff there. And that's the fit. The only thing left is my morning affirmations.
We're the good guys. People like me, not just racists. I'm not afraid of liberals. You're keeping America safe from children and line cooks. Rich politicians are my friend. I feel good about what I'm doing.
So there you go. Love Drew Morgan. And don't know really much else to say about this. It's bad all around. It's bad because of the human implications of what the administration is doing. It's bad for the immigrants. It's bad for their communities. It's going to be bad for us economically. And it's going to be bad when these freaks get more power and bigger budget and more of them. So, not good. Really bad. Adam, did you want to talk about this tenant union stuff that you saw in the news?
I think we should try to end it on a positive note, right?
Yeah.
We've had some heavy news here lately, so let's celebrate a victory. We did have a victory in the South, and that's always important. It was a couple weeks ago, a judge issued a statewide restraining order against a Kentucky landlord in a historic win for the Louisville Tenants Union. Really excited to hear that. Jefferson Circuit Court Judge Julie Kalin issued the order against a New Jersey company, OSPM, that manages multiple properties in Kentucky. And as part of a lawsuit filed by Regency Park Apartments tenant who said she was retaliated against after she started organizing with the Louisville Tenants Union. The resident said she received threats of eviction after speaking with her neighbors about organizing. Now, the judge's order means under Kentucky's anti-retaliation law, if the landlord decreases services, files evictions, or any other retaliatory measures, it will be held in contempt for doing so. The law is within the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, which protects tenant union members in Jefferson County, there in Kentucky, as well as other jurisdictions. And from Andrew Chandler, the Louisville attorney who argued for the injunction, this is a legal result that confirms what every tenant who has tried to organize a union already knows to be true, that retaliation is illegal, that union busting inflicts irreparable harm on them and their families, and that housing regulations are meaningless without a serious way to enforce them. Tenants on these properties no longer have to live in fear of losing their housing or having their utilities shut off simply because they are organizing to build power in their own homes. And, why are we covering this on the Valley Labor Report? We primarily talk about workplace organizing and labor unions in the workplace. But ultimately, tenant organizing is worker organizing, right? I mean, most tenants are working class. Vast majority of people who are not working class are probably not tenants. So when tenants come together to fight rent hikes, poor maintenance, or harassment, they're building the same muscles that we use in labor unions: solidarity, collective demands, and standing up to retaliation. And so for many working class people, housing is really like another front on this same fight. You can win a raise at work, but if your rent goes up, $300, you're still stuck in basically the same place. So tenant unions and labor unions are natural allies. And in places like Louisville, they're not just aligned, they're overlapping. Many of these same tenants are, of course, workers. Many of these same landlords are employers. So let this be a reminder, whether it's the boss or the landlord, organized people are more powerful than organized money. The Louisville Tenants Union says they are a multiracial, multi-generational power organization made up of poor and working class tenants dedicated to building tenant power. They say they are member-led and come from different backgrounds, identities, and worldviews. Despite their differences, they share a common self-interest, the guarantee of safe, secure, healthy, and permanently affordable housing for all. Louisville Tenants Union says the only way we will achieve this is by organizing across the lines that are used to divide us. So, solidarity with the Louisville Tenants Union, and may this victory inspire more organizing in every corner of working class life.
Absolutely, yeah. Very cool, very cool. Let's see. Well, let's do this this UPS stuff, I guess, because we did get a voicemail from that, and then we'll wrap up on the Charleston 5. We talked some about UPS last week, a little bit about the buyout that they are offering. Sean O'Brien gave a town hall address last week to UPS members, talking about the buyout. The union claims the buyout is illegal for two reasons. A Will in the chat mentioned one of the second ones, but it does seem like, and I don't know if this is exactly what they're claiming in the grievances, but they do seem to be pointing to UPS's commitment to create jobs rather than cut jobs as one reason that this buyout package is a violation of the contract. But another one, as was pointed out by a William in the chat, is that the UPS Teamsters contract forbids extra contractual agreements or agreements between UPS and an individual that is not covered by the contract. This was not covered by the contract, and so it seems like an extra agreement. The Roswell Hub did a good breakdown on this as well, so definitely if you're a UPS Teamster, you should watch Sean O'Brien's Town Hall, and you should watch the Roswell Hub's video about the situation as well. They've got some other good stuff. Both groups of folks, and I think most union-minded folks would encourage UPS Teamsters not to take the buyout because it's ultimately going to be detrimental. I mean, one of the things that the Roswell Hub folks were talking about is how in most places across the country, the feeling is one of being short-staffed rather than being overstaffed. Like they're already having drivers working, long days, lots of days in a week, and so the idea that we can get rid of people seems pretty strange to folks working at UPS, at least according to the Roswell Hub folks. So definitely check that out. So we talked about that last week, and we got a voicemail. Let's play this voicemail, clip 3.
Hey, what's up, man? Great show. Been watching you since the pandemic, or maybe it was during the contract negotiations. But anyways, just great show. I'm on the West Coast. Calling to let you know, I'm seeing the same things over here that you're talking about from your area. Also need to tell you about the change.org petition. If you Google change.org and then Carol Tomei, you'll see it. There's a petition. Should probably let people know about that. If there's a change at the top, we can get some more new strategy in the company. That's what we need right now. Because we don't have any vision, and that's why our stock price is down. We're not coming out with strategic innovative growth initiatives. All of our initiatives right now are cost cutting, cost savings. Our company's looking scared. We're looking like we're downsizing. It looks like we're losing. We look like losers compared to Amazon, and it's looking bad, man. On that note, we need to buy eBay. That's the solution. So I sent an email to our new CFO. We have a new one now. Came in when stock was about $115 per share about a month or two ago. It's already down to 100. It was even down to 92. And so I told him, this is all self-inflicted. Right now we can afford it. I ran it. I ran all the math. We could buy eBay. If we bought eBay, eBay ships 1.6 billion packages a year. We lost 1.2 billion packages per year with Amazon. That was our biggest customer, 25% of our volume. So we could buy eBay right now, and we can afford it. We have many ways to finance that leverage buyout, and we would have more volume. We would actually be growing. We would not be shutting down our buildings, 200 buildings. We would not be laying people off. We wouldn't be doing these buyouts. We would actually be growing. We would be hiring people. So this is the solution, and we would take control over our destiny. So I wanted to at least run this by you because I think this is important. No one's talking about it. So yeah, thank you so much for your show. If you want to call me back, I can talk more about that leverage buyout deal because it would net UPS $500 million in synergies per year. And it would also boost our share price by probably $15, $20 a share immediately on the news overnight, because we would be vertically integrated. And then we could actually take our UPS stores and we could use those as sell on eBay, centers where we take a photo, we list, and we package and we ship. We do it all. You just drop off your sneakers to the UPS store on your way to work, and UPS store listed on eBay platform, and there's savings there because UPS can then make the shipping a little bit cheaper. UPS can then give the eBay fee a little bit cheaper. UPS can make the listing fee or the packaging fees. All those it can be a package deal. Right now it's very costly, and the mom and pop shops that are doing this business model are charging like 50% of the value. So that's why no one wants to sell their stuff on eBay like that. But UPS can do it and do it in a way that can scale. Goodwill right now is getting $7 billion per year. So that's just a lot of people not wanting to deal with the hassle. They're giving all their valuables to Goodwill, where UPS store could actually start taking some of that market share, which I don't feel bad about because Goodwill, they're kind of corrupt. It's kind of like a for-profit business model in a way, like.
Recording cut out. You can only have so long of a voicemail, but I think I agree also with the ending note about Goodwill. I've heard lots of not good things about Goodwill, and as far as the business idea, I don't know. We're a Union Talk radio program. I don't have any thoughts about the business strategy of companies. Really, maybe that would be a good idea. Maybe it wouldn't. I'll leave that for other people to decide.
It's interesting. I mean, I think as unionists, we have to be careful when we are dealing with monopoly power. Mm-hmm. And I think there's sometimes benefits that unions can see in the short term from their employers becoming monopoly power in the economy. But there's a lot of risk to that as well. So I think we do have to be mindful of that. Just speaking about eBay did remind me that there are unionized workers who have been fighting with eBay for quite some time. They are part of CWA. They work for a trading card company that was purchased by eBay a couple years ago. So there is a union struggle already at eBay.
I think that one is resolved. Right?
Well,
TCG player.
The last I heard, I think the company was being shut down by eBay. Is that right?
They, I don't know about the company, but the distribution center that unionized in New York was shut down. The workers accepted a buyout offer, and they're moving that business to a non-union distribution center in Louisville. Is my understanding, and so I think that is resolved. But yeah, eBay not a friend of unions, and so if UPS bought it, then maybe it would be maybe it would be a little bit better for the people that work there.
Perhaps
too.
Easier for Teamsters to organize.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just something to think about. It's interesting, but I'm with you. I don't have a lot of insight on what the company should do. I mean, I think it's easier to think through these ideas for the Postal Service, right? Mm-hmm. Where we all kind of have a stake in that. I'm not a UPS employee. I don't have a stake in that necessarily, so it's a little different for me.
I'll just say the bottom line, don't take the buyout offer. File a grievance if you see it being rolled out at your facility in accordance with the Teamsters directives on that. and the Teamsters should have a say in how UPS is run. And maybe in your next contract, the Teamsters can negotiate 50% board share, and they can appoint the West Coast caller to the board of directors, and he can try to implement his idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have any thoughts about that, give us a call, 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a written comment at tvlr.fm/contact. You got a little bit of labor history story for us, right, Adam?
Yeah, I'll keep it quick because we're kind of at time, but I did want to just lift up this article that Labor Notes put out this past week by Carrie Taylor. And Carrie Taylor is a member of the Charleston Workers Center and wrote about the Charleston Five. So it was back in June, there was a commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the successful campaign to free the Charleston Five and the founding of the International Dock Workers Council. So for those who are not familiar with this story, for nearly 2 years, 5 members of the ILA, the International Longshoremen's Association, faced felony rioting charges and prison sentences. And it stemmed from their roles in a January 2000 confrontation with police at the entrance to the Columbus Street Terminal in Charleston. And it became a huge international outcry. Civil rights groups, unions, many got involved and really viewed these charges as a racist attack on organized labor by a very politically ambitious attorney general in South Carolina at the time, Charles Condon. 4 of the 5 workers involved were black. And it was after a lot of pressure that South Carolina finally dismissed the charges in November of 2001. So the Charleston Five did avoid prison, but they were in house arrest for nearly 2 years. And so a lot of folks got together in South Carolina last month to reflect on that anniversary and to kind of, reflect on its place in labor history. It's not without noting, I think, that South Carolina has the lowest union density in the country currently. And that's by design. It's intentional that the South has less unions than the rest of the country. They want to use the South as a refuge for anti-unionism. Companies come to the South hoping to avoid union power. And the powers that be here in the South are eager to do their bidding and are eager to keep us as Southern workers from knowing our heritage and knowing about folks like the Charleston Five who put it on the line to fight for their brothers and sisters. And so, check that article out on Labor Notes. It's called Longshore Workers Remember the Struggle to Free the Charleston Five.
That's going to be it for us this week, folks. Appreciate everybody tuning in. The phone number is 844-899-8857. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can do that anytime, day or night, no matter where you are, and we might respond to it on the next program. You can also leave us a comment at tvlr.fm/contact. Send us a donation, tvlr.fm/donate. Buy our merch at tvlr.fm/store. Buy a membership to Means TV with promo code TVLR for 20% off your first month. And watch us on Means TV. It's a great program, a great thing they've got over there, means.tv. And labornotes.org, obviously, subscribe to that. Check out their events. Check out their trainings if you want to learn how to be a better unionist. Labornotes.org. Appreciate everybody's time. Going to wrap it up, and we'll see you next week.